welcome everybody to our talk. So Pablico and I are going to talk about story tools and what story tools are and the story of the story tools. I want to present this sort of in like a chronological way. So I'm going to start basically how this all came to be, and then we're going to see what it is and how it's going to be used. So Pablico is going to do some demoing. I'm going to be doing the boring parts. Let's get right into it. So here's a question that you may have heard before, like, why does Blender have a video editor? It's a good question, and I hope that this talk will answer it. We'll get back to that at the end. So, where do we begin? We begin in 2021, when I was hired by SPA to work on their latest projects, and they were very interested in doing storyboarding inside of Blender. And I was hired together with a colleague of mine, Jan, you can see here. We were basically tasked to figure out the problem of how do they want to do like story development inside of Blender. Like what are the issues, how is it going to look like, how are the story artists going to work. And luckily Jan had prior experience with that. So he worked at other studios before that. They already used Blender. And he was already like a bit knowledgeable when it comes to the VSC, how to work with it, how to develop add-ons for it. And he basically came up with the idea of, okay, let's not like reinvent the wheel. Let's try and use as many features as we can inside of Blender, like that Blender already has. And there was one problem that he described to me, which is that in Blender you can edit the scene, obviously, right? It has a VSC, so you can edit your sequence, but you can't do both at the same time. And this sort of makes the whole sequence workflow a bit clunky. Like if you want to storyboard while also like, moving shots around, you can't do that like within the same Blender window. You'd have to like open multiple windows or context switch the whole time. And that made it like not really streamlined. And this is the problem that we looked at when we came to SPA. It's like, how can we make this better? And we came up with a simple thing. It seems kind of obvious now. Like, okay, you have the sequencer. Let's just override the scene that it uses. And this is what we call the scene override. And it took a bit of like tinkering to get it right, but it did end up working for us. Like we just hacked it together basically for the production and said like, okay, this is it. And yeah, it ended up working actually quite reasonably well. So you can see that the edit actually has strips in it, but it's not the same scene as a 001. So you're looking at a different scene in the 3D viewport. And we had a whole presentation about it at BCon 2022 and showed like the whole process. So if you want to find out more on how we use it there, you can watch that presentation. But yeah, this is basically what it looks like. It's the same concept, so you can see the edit scene in the sequencer and a different scene in the main window. And then it's just like basically a small add-on built on top to like make the workflow faster, be able to like tweak shots easily. There's like an overlay in the dope sheet to like manipulate the scene strip directly from the dope sheet, things like that. So it's just layers on top to make it faster for the story artist. All right. Then in October 2022, this is already like into production and things are moving forward. I tried to personally attempt to write a patch that could actually be merged into Blender to have this concept, because again, like this, we did at SPA is mostly a hack, or was mostly a hack. And I submitted it. This is on the old like developer website, if people remember that even, I don't know. And yeah, this is kind of like what it looked like. The thing says, this patch is under development. It will crash Blender. It might not even compile. So this was like very, very, very early stuff. And this was kind of the idea. It introduced the concept of a new data block that sort of hosts the timeline and the strips of the VSC. And it lives like at the same level as the scene, so at the window level in a way. And it's sort of like another high-level data block, which is extremely disruptive to how Blender is designed. It doesn't really like this idea a lot. But yeah, we'll get back to this topic in a bit. Moving forward, in 2023, I started to work at Blender, but I wasn't really hired to work on the VSC. I was hired to work on Grease Pencil, and that took a lot of my time. So it was like, yeah, almost 2 years later when Sergey, Francesco, and I started talking about the VSC, and that they wanted to really like push this idea of having more story tools inside of Blender forward. And yeah, so the idea was, okay, let's come up with like an initial plan to get the conversation started. How should we attack this? Like, what's the design? And I started to work on a new design. This might look familiar because it's very familiar to this proof of concept that I developed 2 years ago. So again, it talks about the idea of introducing like a high-level data block that's sort of sits next to the scene. In this case, it's called the sequence. And yeah, its responsibility again is like hosting the strips of the VSC. It's like responsible for rendering out the sequence, bringing in scenes and things of that nature. So it's basically only for when you're using video editing. You wouldn't use it otherwise. And this design was sort of made to answer important questions like, okay, is this feasible? Like, can we actually do this? What are the like theoretical limitations of this design? Like, what if we sort of piece the blocks together? Like, do we run into issues? Talking about the questions, yes. Simple questions like, what should happen when you press F12 or when you want to render? In the current Blender world, that's obvious. Like, okay, it just renders the active scene. But if you have a sequence that's sort of at the same level, now it gets ambiguous, right? Like if you're working in your video editing template and you press F12, you want to render that sequence, not the scene. So like a simple question suddenly has like a more complicated answer, and you have to make a decision. Like it's not obvious anymore. What happens when you press space? This is an interesting one. Because again, like in every editor, when you press space, it plays back the scene, right? Play back your animation, obviously. But again, like the sequence should also be able to be played back. So how do you do that? Like when does that context switch happen? Like is it when you mouse over the editor, like something to be designed? Where are my tool settings? So Blender has this interesting concept of putting all of your tool settings in a scene. And that works if you just work with one scene. But as soon as you have like, other things that you need tool settings for, where do you put them and where should they be? Where are my output settings? So the scene stores the output settings because you can render scenes, but then if you render a sequence, should that have its own output settings? Or should they move to like a higher level? More questions, right? Okay, now we're getting into the weeds. What happens when I render my file via the command line? If I just say, Blender, please render this file, what should it render? I guess the active scene, the active sequence, it gets blurry. So all of this stuff was basically a thought experiment. Okay, what would happen if we do this? And what would we have to change? And that was great, but in practice, we also needed to know, okay, what are the technical challenges? And so then in 2025, I started to actually work on a prototype. I actually started coding on something that, we could look at and see like, okay, does this work? Does this break everything? What are the challenges? This is what it looked like. I hope this looks very familiar to people because nothing really changed, which is a good thing. We didn't want to like break everybody's workflow, of course. So yeah, in the middle there is basically your sequence button. You press new, you create a new sequence, you work in your sequence. Everything is beautiful, theoretically. Yes, this was the prototype. Okay, I don't know why there's an empty slide here. We worked with the prototype and we started to experiment. Okay, what does this entail? Because just making a prototype is easy. Actually making a project out of that is hard. Like you need to allocate developer time towards a project. You need to actually do it. So then the next task was basically, okay, what can we realistically do within like one release cycle? Like what is the first milestone here that we can achieve? We had to scratch the sequence ID. So that was way too big. Like it's a multi-year project essentially, but it is not going to happen for now. We don't know what's going to happen, but there's still the idea of like separating the VSE cleanly from scenes and make it like its own, part of its own ID. But this is what we did do. So instead of using a new ID, we just reused the same thing that the VSE already uses, which is a scene. But instead of using the active scene, we wanted to make it so at least you can select a different scene. So this is similar to what we did at Spa, but implemented in a cleaner way and with a lot more design behind it. So yeah, scene ID selector in the VSE. So you can actually create like edit scenes that are separate from your scenes with your 3D objects, animation, etc. The second thing is scene time synchronization. So this is something that we talked about the presentation in 2022. Being able to basically scrub the VSE timeline and scrub between scene strips and the current scene that is visible on that frame in the VSE being switched to in the main window and actually updating the time of that scene. So this is something that Pablo is going to demo again later. And this is what it looks like. So you have your scene selector there in the middle with your edit scene. Notice that the active scene is not the same scene, it's a different scene. And you have a way to synchronize the scene time with a toggle. So that's something you can turn on and off. And basically, if you're using Blender as like a 3D modeler or an animator or something like that, nothing of this gets in the way. Like you use Blender as you did before. And this is coming to Blender 5.0. It's already in. And now, Pablo is going to take over.
Yes. Well, I want to do a small introduction of my part in this crazy process. Basically, I was at the time working on a future project that is going to come for the studio, and I was doing like all the kind of layout, storyboarding. It's not like a storyboarding 2D per se, it's more like a 2.5, so it's 3D environments, 2D grease pencil, and all mixed together. And then I was using a story pencil at the time. It's really the only way I found out to use it at the time because there was nothing else. And then Falk asked me if I wanted to join, and I said, sure, why not? I regret everything. No, everything is fine, but I started to touch prototypes that they were really early, so I was testing stuff and continue working in Story Pencil because some of the stuff needed to be improved. So, I mean, it was a bit of back and forth, but at the end, I started using what we have because I think it was good enough for me to carry on. So. I think it was really, I mean, it's in a kind of good state already to be used. I have to say that all the feedback I was giving, it was based on my workflow. So some of the stuff you're gonna see here applies to me. People is welcome to find kind of new ways to work, but just to let you know that this is my way to work. So I'm gonna start with the basics, how to set up the file, how to create the workspace that they work for me at the time. To set up the file, you need to be the video sequence editor. You need to create scene that you will call edit. This edit is the one that is gonna be handling everything. Then you need to go to view, use the footer, and in there you need to be sure that you are clicking the sync, otherwise nothing will work. At the top, you need to be clicking the edit, otherwise you will be switching between scenes, and then you will be wait. Sorry. Is this one? No. Before. Well. Yes. Okay. Again. You create your edit. After that, you need to rename it properly. Then you use the footer. You need to use the sync, otherwise nothing will work. Then you need to pin the edit, because otherwise every time that you switch between the scenes, it will be selecting the scenes that you are on, and then you don't want that when you are exporting your movie. You want to export like the edit itself. And this is like the work space I'm using. I'm using a preview, I'm using the sequencer, and I'm using the properties of the video in the side. So basically that's it. And for the working space, what I'm using is a camera view. I'm using a 3D view where I'm gonna be working. I'm using the dopsheet / graph editor. That is I'm gonna control all my keys with what I animate. That needs to be auto key. That's important because we work with auto key. And then we have the sequencer. Again, with the footer on and the sync on, otherwise it will not work. And then here you will see that there is two scenes, one with the default cube and one with the monkey. And there are two different scenes, but when you're grabbing in the sequencer, then it will switch between them. But if the sync is off, you see that nothing works. So because of this, it's really important to have that on. And you need to don't auto key in there because you don't want to auto key your sequencer. So at the end, you have like two kind of auto keys. The one that you want to do is the one of your scene, but not the one of the edit, because at the end the sequencer is the edit what is having in there. Moving to the scene assets and how to work with them. I'm gonna talk about like how to create them, how to add them from the video sequence editor, how to duplicate them in different ways, and some stuff that you can do with the strips to make your workflow better and faster. So first we start with how to create the scene assets. We have here a super nice room. I model myself. No, that's not true. You rename the scene. That's nice because you need to find it later. You right-click, mark it as an asset. Then you create a catalog. You rename it, rename your stuff because otherwise you're not going to find anything. And then you drag, and you drag it to the catalog, your scene, and then you can rename it if it's needed, but then that's the process to create an asset scene. This is important because later you will need this. You need to create this on a separate file, so you will be able to import it later in your edit scene. So it's better if you have it as a different asset, because otherwise then you will have some problems. It will not duplicate properly. So it needs to be probably your backgrounds, you want them to have them in a different files. Other people can access them, and then you can just like work on them and stuff like that. So the next thing is how to add them to the scenes. really important, because otherwise you are not going to find anything, is you need to set up your paths. You need to set up your asset library, and then put everything how you're supposed to have it, because otherwise you are going to try to add scenes and you're not going to find anything because you don't set up this stuff properly. Then on the sequencer, you right click or your just Shift A, you add your scene, and then you can find there that you have your catalog, and then you just click, and then you have your scene. Same, like you add your catalog, and then you have your scenes. It's as easy as click and apply, so then you can make the other scene shorter. You can also use filter, like to search. So you are going Shift A, and then you just spacebar, and then you can type the name of your catalog or the name of your scene, and then you can apply it like that. Saying also that these scenes are individual of each other. So if you manipulate one, it will not affect the rest of them. So they're like a full copy of whatever asset you are doing. Yes. Now we're going to talk about how to duplicate the scenes. You have different ways to do this, actually two. I did an empty scene here with the sun head. Yes, and then if you see on the top, it says 001. If you Shift D, or you make a full duplicate of them, like a full copy, that means that you create a new one, so the Susan will appear as 002. You manipulate one, it will not affect the copy of them, because you are creating a new full copy of it. If you Alt D, you make a link copy of the first one, and if you see up, it says also 001. That means that any changes you make in any of them, it will affect the other one because it's a link. That is important for what you're gonna do. You have to be in mind how do you duplicate to don't have problems later, because workflow. If you change the stuff that you don't want to change, then you have problems. Functionalities on the strips. First one is, as you can see here, we have a Suzanne head with the most amazing animation you can see. There are two cameras that they're following the action. I just create this small setup. First camera is following, and then later the idea is like the next camera will catch up the rest of the jump. So as you can see, there is only one scene with all the actions. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna split the strip in two. That creates like a link copy of between them. So it's like a soft cut. If you hook up the first camera to the first one, the second camera to the second one, then you have a shared scene between them that you are preparing already, and then you have like what before you were doing with markers by jumping between cameras. Now you can do it like this. And if you change the animation of the monkey, in this case now he's going straight, it is gonna update in both of them because it's linked. So the main advantage of this is if you're going to do some layout requiring some action scene or something, can be maybe interesting to use, because then once you update the action in one scene, you don't have to be doing it in the rest of the scenes. You have the cuts. Related to this, you can shift the cut point between them just by clicking and dragging. And by this, you will change where the cameras are switching between them, but you don't change the animation. It's just like the cutting point between the two cameras will happen before or will happen after. Yep. And again, it's like sharing the animation. Also, one thing you can do is like you can slip the strip. That this will change the animation. It will change when the animation is happening between the two strips. Animation will be shared, but you are shifting the starting point or the ending. Well, actually, the starting point of the animation or the ending point. I mean, both of them. So these two things combined is allowing you to make editing faster because you can just shift the point and then slip the strip, and then things will happen earlier or after it's after just by don't have to go inside and touching all the keys and everything. Just by doing two shortcuts, it will make everything easier. Yeah, as you can see, like then the scene is repeating itself. Yes, now I want to do a small. I mean, I spent Monday animating a shot with all this thing in mind. So you can see how kind of using some of the stuff that I present you before. Yes. Basically, what I'm using the most is the duplicate scenes to have kind of like the environment in same, because they're like correlated shots. That's the easiest way. You have some, I mean, you have the camera already, you have the characters, so that's what I was using. As you can see, it's like a 3D environment. You have some, I have increased pencil strokes on the rigs in there, and then the rigs are on the characters. So like this, I can place the characters wherever I want, and then I don't have to animate the stroke itself. The stroke is going to be just for drawing, but the position of the stroke will be depending on the character itself. I think it's easier for me to just move a character just in A pose and later drawing over. So as you can see, I'm controlling the camera also. The good thing of this is like also you can, if there is something that you like from another scene, you can just drag, find the scene, the pose you want, and then you can just copy it and paste it. So for me, it was like really fast to interact between scenes. I think that's the thing I found the best. Before I had to like go out of the workspace and then go to the video sequence editor, finding the thing that I want, and then go back and be switching all the time. I think I was losing a lot of time. And here is just like you just select and draw. I think it's more streamlined, and I think it was better for me, faster. So yeah, basically as you can see, I'm drawing for the camera. The stroke is in the front of the character. Then if face needed to be adjusted, I adjusted with the rig itself that it has in there. I didn't use too much of the cutting and editing because I'm not using. I think that's easier when you have when you're on a previs with 3D characters and you create some small animations in there. I think it's more useful for that. For the 2D, for me, it was not that much. Again, like just animating. I think I got a bit carry over doing the animation, and it, yeah. Doing a small roughs of what poses I want. And of course, all this is based on a storyboard I did before, like a small thumbnails. As you see before, I put them on the camera, so like this I could match whatever it was in there, kind of the timing I had before, and the poses, and then I have a reference to animate. Yeah, really dirty pass. I could put some music, I think. Yeah, I can sing also. Yeah. So yeah, touching the camera, everything is easy. This kind of workflow for me really works pretty good. it's easy for me. It's easier to just draw over than posing the character. Even just I just want to have like the camera kind of in a roughly good position, and later I will have to do like a proper pass on animation. I think like if we have the animation bits properly with the 2D, then I think 3D will be translated to 3D will be like the easy part. I'm just going over and doing a small cleanup pass, nothing crazy. Just wanted to have kind of like keep some like the model in giving a small something else than some Scrabbles. So yeah, small cleanup. I mean, I'm not showing too much story tools itself. It's more like how to. I think it's interesting. Otherwise, I can pass. Yeah, I'm not only drawing. I'm also using the rest of the tools like sculpting and editing. I do use that a lot just to speed up the process. At the end, it doesn't have to look really beautiful. It's just a guide of what is gonna come later. And gonna add some colors to make differentiation of between the two characters. Yeah, really rough stuff, but at least the cameras can be used later for the kind of for final as a reference also. A lot of undo. That's how you how you draw like this. You're undoing all the time. And yeah, I want to show you also like what the thing looks in 3D. So you can see the sequencer is playing, so it's switching between different scenes, and then you have like the viewport with all the action that is happening, and then you have your camera that is playing the action. So I think it's a nice way also like to, in this case, how to see the space and how the things how the things are moving. To yeah. So that was everything.
Thank you, Pablo. All right, yeah, I'm gonna do the closing bit. So I'm gonna talk a bit about like future plans, what we want to do still, and what is not planned yet, but is on my wish list. So, yep. One thing that we really want to do is something that we're really missing right now is the ability to be able to see the scene strip, so sort of in and out in the dope sheet, because if you don't know like what is the thing that I'm actually working on with this strip, then it's really hard to tell like where does the cut actually happen. So you can see that in this case I'm using like a lighter overlay to show the parts that are outside of the scene strip, and the darker part is what's actually happening inside that scene strip. There's already a PR for this, so this is probably going to land soon, maybe in 5.1, we'll see. But yeah, this is one of the things. The other thing is adding new templates. So right now we just have like a video editing template, but I think Pablo spent time showing you how to set this up. Ideally, you just click a button, storyboarding or something like that, app template, and you're presented with this and you can directly go. So this is also something that we're looking into. I think there's already a PR for this as well. So we're going to have at some point more app templates designed to like let you just start working immediately for this kind of workflow. So those are two things that are coming up. There are more things that I have on my personal wish list, but none of this is planned. So take it with a big grain of salt. Scene strip thumbnails would be amazing, because right now it's really hard to tell. Like if you look at your timeline, it's just like a gray bunch of strips. Obviously, it would be nicer if we could actually see what's in those strips. This has big implications, because it means that basically behind the scenes we like render your scene. You could imagine that rendering a scene, like just to be able to show a little thumbnail, is quite involved. Like we have to evaluate the whole scene. So depending on how heavy that is, that's not a good idea. So we need to figure that part out. But yeah, that might happen at some point. I'm really sold on the idea of having a sequencer in the camera view. Some of you may know that we can activate the compositor in the camera view and see the compositing result through the camera view. What if you could show the sequence result? Because if you're doing like, I don't know, animation with like text strips and you're doing like a whole bunch of stuff, you can't see that right now in camera view, obviously, because you're just looking at the 3D scene. But what if you could composite that result in the camera view? It's something that I would really like to see, but nothing is planned of this. So again, and of course, sequence ID. I think the idea of like separating the because right now it's a bit confusing. Like you have to select a scene to be able to edit. It's still like a bit weird. I mean, used to be weird, but it's still weird. So it would be nice to separate that out a bit and have the scene sort of have one goal instead of like 1,000, which it makes also development harder. And but yeah, again, like changing this is gonna require a lot of work and redesigning some of the core principles of Blender. So it's not gonna happen soon. All right, I think we went through like most of this talk, but coming back to my question, I think the VSC is extremely underappreciated in Blender. I think it is actually like a really unique thing about Blender, that you can like just edit inside of it. And especially when you start combining it with other features of Blender, it becomes extremely powerful. Like nothing that other software can do. So it's really interesting. Like story tools, obviously. I hope that one of the answers to this question is what we showed today. Hopefully, you would agree to that. But there's other things like there are plans to add a compositor modifier to strips in the VSC, so you can start doing compositing on strips and add like custom effects. And we have compositor assets, right, which were presented today earlier. So you can like put this all together and it becomes like an extremely powerful thing. So I think it's really good that we have the video editor, and I think we should keep it definitely. Again, because it's like so important to the whole ecosystem of Blender, all the things you can do with it. All right. Thank you. I don't know how much time we have, if we're over time or under time, but maybe 1 or 2 questions, if people have questions. And try and answer them. Yes.
Are we ever going to get Cowboy back?
Are we ever going to get Cowboy back?
She's asking when we are going to have Cowboy back, and that's the project I was working. And I guess after Singularity is gonna be back. We will work on it. Cool. So it's gonna be a short film itself. So yeah, we have to finish other stuff first.
The question was, other than like reporting bugs, is there anything to help us guys? Yes, you can download the alpha and like try it out. There's a feedback thread on DevTalk if you want to get involved and have fun. Oh, you can obviously donate to Blender, yes. You can always do that. You should always do that, not just specifically for this project. But yeah, I think just try it out. Give us feedback. That would help a lot. Yes, Julian.
I remember there was one other really interesting question. That is, what happens when you delete a scene?
What happens when you delete the scene? You mean like a scene strip?
Yeah, like a scene strip. Yeah. What happens to the scene?
It doesn't get deleted, no.
Okay, it's just always.
So, okay, there's normally in Blender, data blocks have users. You might notice like some of the data block selectors have like a number next to them saying like how many things use this. Scenes don't have users. And this is part of like the core design of Blender. It's like this weird thing because Blender always expects there to be a scene, so they're not user counted at all. So currently scene strips, they don't add user count. So when you delete them, the scene is going to be there in the file always. It's not just going to get deleted. Yes?
Thank you. I'm wondering if you want to iterate on a sequence. For example, I have a really cool fight sequence, but for this one shot, I might want a close-up and or maybe an establisher shot. Can you actually layer on top of each other? Because I saw you have the gray lines sometimes in different channels, but what happens if you stack scene on top of each other?
Yeah, so so the question was, what happens if you layer scene strips, basically? Like, can you do that? Of course you can. Scene strips, by default, of course, they're like opaque strips. Like, you can think of them as just like a video file. So if you stack them, the topmost one is going to be rendered. But you can add opacity. Like, you can manipulate them in the preview, like rotate them around. You can do whatever you want with the strip itself. It's a normal strip. But yeah, you have to decide how you want to use that. You could layer them, like you could add opacity and like fade between two scenes. Totally. Yes, Julian.
Crazy question. What happens when you retime this strip?
What happens when you retime the strip? So Pablo was showing this feature. You can press S to slide the time of the strip. You can retime it, and you can retake time, and it works perfectly fine.
No, I mean making it slower or faster.
Oh, yeah, you can do that too. It's going to be slower and faster.
With the retiming tool.
Yeah, so the question was about the retiming tool. Yes, you can retime. It's just going to like render the scene and retime it. Yes?
One question about compositing. When you render out the sequence, does it respect the compositing of that scene?
Okay, it's a very good question. When you render out a scene using the scene strip, does it use the compositing of that scene? And the answer is yes. So the render pipeline, the way it's built up is you have your render engine that's rendering the scene. Then you have the compositor, takes in render layers, does the compositing, outputs that, then it gets sent to a sequencer. So it's happening in between. Yes?
Yeah. Will it work with the anime editor, or is like a different thing? Because if you stack dot actions in an anime editor, is it going to work together, or is
Okay, so the question was, is this going to work with the NLA? The answer is yes, it works with the NLA because all of the animation is happening inside of the scene. The only thing that the sequencer does is basically take the in and out, render that part. But the scene is getting evaluated as usual, so it's going to use the NLA, it's going to use the whole animation system under the hood. Yes?
Plan to streamline, let's say I have a heavy sequence, I render it out as a PNG sequence, to quickly also have that linked to there so it shows the PNG sequence rendered out instead of the live 3D scene? Or
You can use all the features of the VSC, which includes having...
A question.
Repeating a question. Yes, the question was, can I render out my scene as PNG sequences, bring it in, and have a live link? So, meaning... You don't know, okay. Yes, you can render out your scene, bring it in as an image sequence. Obviously, the VSC supports rendering image sequences, so you can bake it down. If you want to make it so that when you edit the sequence strip and reflect that in the edit of the scene, then you're gonna have to write an add-on for that or something to yeah.
keep that manual to the user?
Yes, yeah. But yeah, nothing's preventing you from doing that. Yes.
This might be like the craziest question I might ask. So you're working on adding a nested blender scenes, right, in sequence, which means you're trying to take blender data, which is a scene. So I was thinking instead of using a blender format, can't you use some other format? I'm thinking like a USD, which is the universal scene description, which can handle massive data. Can you go to that route so that because Blender is not still there yet to handle USD? So what if story blocks is the right, or story tool is the right concept to actually use USD? Because USD is a scene description which can handle
Yeah.
So you don't have to reinvent what other people are doing it. You can actually use USD itself and use that as a.
Okay, so the question is, can we use other things than Blender scenes in the strips? So what if you wanted to use a USD file? I think the problem is that you still have to import the USD. So Blender still has to know how to construct that USD file, like USD scene, how to render it, etc. So you still have that part to figure out. But in theory, I don't see an issue with having like other scene, other strip types. Rendering other things. Like you could imagine maybe like bringing in like an Alembic file or something. Of course, you could just import that as a scene because Blender should support that. Just importing the file as it is into a scene and then wrapping that in a scene strip. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't see exactly the advantage of just importing like the file directly as a strip. Yeah, because again, like Blender still has to know how to evaluate the animation. It still has to know how to render it. So that's basically a scene for Blender. Okay, hope that answers the question. One more question, yes.
Can there be, because he was importing the assets as an asset library, can it be like externally linked files in the mix? So you use files that you're not necessarily going to override or change, like a full background or something that is going to be stable through scenes and not necessarily imported as an asset from the asset library?
Yes, so the question was, can you use other things than scene asset to import? Like what if I want to link in a scene as a scene strip? Can I do that? Yes, you can. Of course, you can't change anything about that scene, but if that's what you want to do, that's actually an interesting thing. We didn't talk about this. If you have like an edit for something that people are working on all the time and things change, and you just link in the scene, you can do that. There's nothing preventing you from just linking in the scene and creating a scene strip for it, and like editing that scene strip as much as you want without changing the file at all. Yes, you can do that. Okay, one more question here.
Since it's about storyboarding, was there also a way that we can put annotations linked to the to the script, so that you have some like directions written out that maybe sound directive or something like that. How it's usually the case with storyboards.
Okay, so I think the question is about like getting feedback maybe and
Yeah.
like.
When you have a storyboard, you have
Yeah.
normally on the right side like a
Yeah.
annotation, like where you say what this scene should
Yeah.
go through. Will there be something like that you can do that as well?
Okay, so I think this is like specifically about storyboarding and how people usually work with storyboarding. So can you have a setup where you have notes on the side of your board and other things, maybe sound? So yes, in theory you can. I think right now this requires a lot of manual work. So in theory we should improve the like storyboarding presets and how you work with storyboards, like not having to use strips necessarily, but just like boards, full stop, and being able to draw on them. That's currently not supported, and I don't think there are any current plans to like add more support for this. So this is something that you would have to write an add-on for example, to like make a layout that has like a scene that has this on the side, like where you can type in text or something like that. So this would be not something that Blender currently handles. Okay, yeah, one more question.
Is it mostly like a performance issue or something? Let's say for storage, you're handling the 2D elements, which would not be like the very heaviest objects on the scene. But since you're trying to get the whole scene, if the scene itself has like a huge environment, is there any limitation? Like when you switch from one scene to other scene,
Yeah.
there's a loading time or something. How will that be like? How will the user feel?
Yeah. So it's a great question about performance. What if I have a heavy scene and I switch from one strip to another one? The Blender switches out the whole scene. Will this slow down Blender? The answer is probably yes. Depending on how heavy your scenes get, you will feel that. But Blender caches the depth graph. So once it builds the scene depth graph once, it doesn't have to rebuild it like every time, at least not the relations of that depth graph. So the first playback might be choppy. The next playback will be better. It will not be perfect. It will still have to like reevaluate animations and stuff. But this is something that Blender has to improve anyway. Like the nice thing about this is that it's completely separate from like the story tools itself, right? Improving depth graph performance, improving scene evaluation as a whole will improve this as well. It's not something that we would have to specifically work on. The one thing that we do have to work on, and there's actually a bug about this right now, is that the VSC doesn't build its own depth graph of the scene. It reuses the same one that essentially the active window uses, which can cause issues, and we're working on that. And this also relates to building thumbnails. Like, if you want to build thumbnails, you need something outside of the active scene that can build those thumbnails. So it's a related topic. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That's it.